The buzz of my phone at 11:47 p.m. should have been my first warning. Nobody calls that late unless someone's dead, in jail, or about to ask for money. I glanced at the screen and saw Mom glowing back at me. Patricia Williams, the woman who brought me into this world and had been trying to guilt me out of my peace ever since. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something about the late hour made me pick up. Hello? Marcus, honey, I'm so sorry to call this late. Her voice had that shaky quality she got when she was about to drop bad news. Are you awake? I sat up in bed, already feeling my stomach tighten. I am now. What's wrong? It's about your sister. Of course it was. Everything was always about my sister these days. Isabella Williams Crawford, or Bella as she preferred to, be called now that she was married to some guy named Derek who sold insurance and drove a leased BMW he couldn't afford. At 26, Bella had mastered the art of creating chaos and expecting other people to clean it up. What did she do now? I asked, rubbing my temples. Mom took a shaky breath. She's in some serious financial trouble, Marcus. Really serious. Financial trouble. That was putting it mildly. Bella's relationship with money was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You knew it was going to end badly, but you couldn't look away. Over the years, I'd watched her bounce from one financial disaster to another. Credit cards maxed out by 21, a car repossessed at 23, student loans she'd taken out for a degree she never finished because she decided college wasn't for her halfway through junior year. How serious are we talking? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. She owes $38,000. The number hit me like a slap. $38,000. That wasn't credit card debt or a car loan. That was serious money. Life-changing. Money? To who? That's the problem, honey. It's not a bank. My blood went cold. Mom, please tell me she didn't borrow money from loan marks. Silence. Long, heavy silence that told me everything I needed to know. She was desperate, Marcus. Derek lost his job 6 months ago, and they were behind on everything. The mortgage, the car payments, credit cards. She found these people online who said they could help. I was fully awake now, pacing my bedroom floor. Online loan sharks? Jesus Christ, Mom. How did she think that was a good idea? They're not exactly loan sharks. They're some kind of private lending company. But Marcus, they want their money back, and they're not being very patient about it. Private lending company. That was just a fancy way of saying legal loan sharks. The kind of people who charged interest rates that would make a mobster blush, and had lawyers instead of baseball bats. What kind of timeline are we talking about? They want it all paid back by the end of next month, or they're going to start taking action. Legal action, Marcus. They could take the house. The house. The little 3-bedroom ranch in Riverside that Derek and Bella had bought 2 years ago with a down payment they'd borrowed from Mom and Dad. The same house they'd been behind on payments for ever since Derek's construction company laid him off. I closed my eyes and tried to process everything. This wasn't just about Bella anymore. This was about my parents potentially losing money they couldn't afford to lose, about my sister's marriage falling apart under the financial pressure, about a mess so big it could destroy multiple lives. Marcus? Mom's voice was smaller now, more fragile. Are you still there? I'm here. I'm just processing. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're doing so well for yourself. The promotion last year, that big bonus you mentioned at Christmas, you've always been so good with money, so responsible. Here it comes, I thought. The ask. The reason for the 11:47 p.m. phone call. We were wondering, hoping, if maybe you could help her out. Just this once. Just this once. Those 3 words that had been following me around my entire adult life. Just this once. Could you co-sign for Bella's apartment? Just this once. Could you lend her money for a security deposit? Just this once, could you help with her car insurance because she was a little short? Except it was never just once. It was always the beginning of a pattern that ended with me feeling used and Bella learning nothing. Mom, that's $38,000. That's not pocket change. I know, honey, I know. But what else can we do? Your father and I, we don't have that kind of money. We're already stretched thin helping with their mortgage payments. You're the only one who what? Who has money? Who's successful? Who's stable? Who could actually make a difference here? I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights of downtown Phoenix. My apartment was on the 15th floor of a nice building in the Arts District. I'd worked my ass off to get here, to have this view, this life. I was a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates, one of the biggest investment firms in Arizona. I made good money, great money even. But $38,000 wasn't chump change, even for someone in my position. Marcus, please. Just think about it. Your sister is scared, really scared. These people, they call her every day now, multiple times a day. Derek's been applying for jobs, but the market is tough right now. They just need time. Time. Another word that always came up in these conversations. Bella just needed time to get back on her feet, time to figure things out, time to become a responsible adult. At what point did time run out? At what point did you stop waiting for someone to grow up and start holding them accountable? What about bankruptcy? I asked. They can't file for bankruptcy. They looked into it, but with Derek's business and the house and some other complications, their lawyer said it wouldn't discharge this particular debt. Something about how the loan was structured. Of course. Trust Bella to find the one type of predatory loan that bankruptcy couldn't touch. Marcus, please. I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. Your father is talking about taking out a second mortgage on our house, but at our age, with his health issues. Dad. Richard Williams, 63 years old, diabetic, with a bad back. From 30 years of construction work, the idea of him taking on more debt at his age made my stomach turn. Don't do that, I said quickly. Don't even think about doing that. Then what choice do we have? We can't just let her lose everything. We can't let these people destroy her life. Her life. What about my life? What about the life I'd built? The financial security I'd worked so hard to achieve? What about the fact that I was single? No kids, no one depending on me except apparently every member of my immediate family whenever they made bad decisions? I was 29 years old and I'd been the family's emergency fund since I graduated. College. First job out of school, and suddenly everyone had problems that required my solution. Car troubles, rent shortfalls, unexpected expenses that were somehow always my unexpected responsibility. I need to think about this, Mom. Of course, honey, of course. But Marcus, time is really important here. These people, they're not going to wait much longer. After I hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the wall for a long time. $38,000. That was more than half my annual salary after taxes. That was my emergency fund, the money I'd been saving to buy a house of my own. The financial cushion that let me sleep at night, knowing I could handle whatever life threw at me. I thought about Bella, probably lying awake in her bed right now, staring at the ceiling and wondering how her life had gotten so out of control. I thought about Derek, scrolling through job postings at midnight, trying to figure out how to dig himself out of a hole that seemed to get deeper every day. I thought about my parents, probably holding each other in their bedroom, whispering about second mortgages and worst-case scenarios. And then I thought about myself, about the pattern I'd been enabling for years. About the way my family saw me not as a person with my own goals and struggles, but as a safety net, a backup plan, a bank account with legs. My phone buzzed with a text message. Bella. Mom told me she talked to you. I know this is huge, Marcus. I know I don't deserve help after everything. But I'm drowning here. Derek and I were fighting every day. I can't eat, can't sleep. These people call me at work, at home, on weekends. I don't know what else to do. Then another message. I'll pay you back, I swear. As soon as Derek finds work, we'll set up a payment plan. You know I'm good for it. Good for it. The same sister who'd borrowed $300 from me 2 years ago for groceries and had never mentioned it again. The same sister who'd promised to pay me back for her share of Dad's birthday dinner and had somehow forgotten about it the next week. But this wasn't $300. This was $38,000. This was real money, serious money, life-changing money. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop, logging into my bank account. The numbers stared back at me, cold and clinical. Checking account, savings account, investment accounts. I could afford $38,000. Technically, it would hurt. It would set me back years in my own goals. But I could do it. The question wasn't whether I could. The question was whether I should. I thought about all the financial planning I'd done over the years, the budgets, the goals, the sacrifices I'd made to build something for myself. I thought about the house I wanted to buy, the wedding I might want to have someday, the kids I might want to raise. All of that would be pushed back, delayed, compromised if I wiped out my savings to fix Bella's latest disaster. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. But I also thought about family, about loyalty, about what it meant to have the ability to help someone you love when they're in crisis. Wasn't this what money was for? Wasn't this more important than my abstract future plans? My phone rang again. This time it was Dad. "Hey, son, I know your mother already talked to you." "Yeah, she did." "I want you to know, Marcus, we're not asking you to do this. We're asking you to consider it. There's a difference." Dad always was better at these conversations than Mom. Less emotional manipulation, more straight talk. "I know, Dad. Your sister made some bad choices. Derek, too. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But sometimes good people make bad choices, and sometimes they need help getting back on track. And sometimes they need to face consequences," I said quietly. Dad was quiet for a moment. "You're not wrong. You'd have every right to say no. Every right to tell us this isn't your problem to solve. But she's your sister, and family. Well, family is complicated." That was Dad. Master of the understatement. "What would you do?" I asked. "If you were in my position?" Another long pause. "Honestly, I don't know. I've never been in your position. I've never had the kind of money that could solve a problem this big. It's a blessing and a burden, I suppose. A blessing and a burden." That summed up my relationship with money pretty well. I'd worked hard to have financial security, but that security came with expectations. Expectations from my family, from myself, from some invisible scorecard that kept track of who had what and who owed what to whom. After Dad hung up, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat back down with my laptop. I started running numbers, calculating. Scenarios. What would $38,000 really mean to my long-term financial picture? How long would it take me to rebuild my savings? What opportunities might I have to miss because I no longer had that cushion? The math was sobering. It wasn't just the $38,000. It was the compound interest I'd lose by not having that money invested. It was the delayed home purchase, which meant more years of rent payments instead of building equity. It was the psychological impact of starting over financially, of feeling vulnerable again after working so hard to feel secure. But then I thought about Bella's kids. She and Derek had 2 little ones, Emma and Tyler, ages 4 and 6. What would happen to them if their parents lost the house? What would it do to their sense of security, their childhood, their future? I closed the laptop and walked back to the window. The city looked different at 2 a.m. Quieter, more peaceful, like it was holding its breath, waiting for morning to come. I wondered how many other people were lying awake right now, staring at their own impossible problems, trying to figure out what the right thing to do was. My phone buzzed again, another text from Bella. I know you're probably asleep, but I can't. Stop thinking about this. I keep wondering how we got here, how everything went so wrong so fast. A year ago, we were doing okay. Not great, but okay. Then Derek's company started laying people off, and it was like dominoes falling. One thing after another until we couldn't catch up. Then, I used to think you were lucky, having all that education and your fancy job. Now I realize it wasn't luck. You worked for it. You made smart choices while I was making dumb ones. I don't blame you if you can't help us. I just want you to know I finally got it. I stared at that message for a long time. It was the first time Bella had ever acknowledged the difference. Between our paths, the first time she'd recognized that my financial stability hadn't just happened by accident. Maybe that was growth. Maybe that was the beginning of the accountability I'd been waiting for her to show. Or maybe it was just another manipulation, a more sophisticated version of the guilt trips I'd been getting my whole life. I set the phone down and tried to sleep, but my mind kept spinning. $38,000. My sister's future, my family's expectations, my own goals and dreams and carefully laid plans. By morning, I'd have to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. The brother who saves the day, or the one who finally says enough is enough. I just wasn't sure yet which one was right. The next morning came too soon, and with it, reality. I had exactly 47 minutes before my first client meeting at Morrison & Associates, and my phone was already buzzing with messages I didn't want to read. 3 texts from Bella, 2 missed calls from Mom, 1 voicemail from Derek that I definitely wasn't ready to hear yet. I grabbed my coffee and headed to the office, deciding to let the family drama simmer while I focused on work. At least at work, problems had clear solutions. Numbers added up the way they were supposed to. Spreadsheets didn't have emotional baggage. My assistant Rachel greeted me with a stack of files and a knowing look. Rough night? You look like you wrestled with a calculator and lost. Something like that. I settled into my office chair and tried to push thoughts of $38,000 out of my head. What's on the agenda? Henderson portfolio review at 9, quarterly projections meeting at 11, and lunch with the Peterson group at 12:30. Oh, and your mom called the office line 10 minutes ago. I looked up sharply. She what? Rachel raised an eyebrow. Said it was urgent family business and asked if I could squeeze you in for a quick call. I told her you were in meetings all morning, but she seemed pretty persistent. Mom calling my work number was a new level of escalation. She'd never crossed that line before, never brought family drama into my professional space. The fact that she had meant this situation was spiraling faster than I'd realized. If she calls back, take a message. I'll deal with it later. But dealing with it later turned out to be impossible when Derek showed up at my office building during lunch. I was walking back from the Peterson group meeting, feeling good about potentially landing a new client, when I spotted him in the lobby. Derek Crawford, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks, wearing a wrinkled polo shirt and the desperate expression of a man who'd run out of options. Marcus, thank God. I was hoping I'd catch you. I glanced around the professional lobby of our downtown high-rise, acutely aware of how out of place this conversation was going to be. Derek, what are you doing here? I needed to talk to you, face to face, about Bella, about the situation we're in. This really isn't the place. I know. But you weren't answering calls, and time is running out, man. These people, they're not joking around. I guided him toward a quiet corner near the elevators, hoping none of my colleagues would witness this family meltdown happening in my workplace. Look, Derek, I get that you're scared, but showing up at my job isn't going to change anything. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen Bella make 1,000 times when she was stressed. You don't understand. They called this morning, Said if we don't have a payment plan in place by Friday, they're moving forward with legal action. Friday? Mom said. End of next month. That was before Bella missed the last 2 phone appointments with them. They're accelerating the timeline. Derek's voice cracked slightly. Marcus, I've applied to 83 jobs in the past month. 83. I've got interviews lined up, but nothing's going to come through fast enough to matter. 83 jobs. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for the guy. Derek wasn't a bad person, just someone who'd gotten in over his head. Construction work had been good to him for years before the market shifted and companies started cutting crews. What about family? Bella's side? Your side? Anyone else who could help? Derek laughed bitterly. My parents are retired and living on Social Security. Bella's parents, your parents, they're already stretched helping us with the mortgage. My brother lives paycheck to paycheck with 3 kids of his own. You're literally the only person in either of our families who has the kind of money that could make a difference. The weight of that statement settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. I was the only one, the only family member who'd made different choices, worked different jobs, lived below my means while saving for the future. And now that future was being held hostage by someone else's poor decisions. Derek, I sympathize, I really do. But $38,000, I know it's a lot. But think about what $38,000 means to you versus what it means to us. To you, it's a setback. To us, it's the difference between keeping our family together and losing everything. There it was. The logic I'd been dreading. The arithmetic of privilege that said because I had more, I owed more. Because I'd been careful with money, I was responsible for those who hadn't been. Have you considered what happens if I say no? I asked quietly. Derek's face went pale. Honestly, we lost the house. Bella and I probably split up. The stress is already killing our marriage. The kids end up bouncing between grandparents and whoever else can take them in. And your parents end up losing whatever money they've already put into helping us because there's no way they're getting that back if we go under. It was a devastating picture, and Derek knew it. He was laying out the dominoes, showing me exactly what would fall if I didn't step in to stop the chain reaction. And if I say yes? What's my guarantee that this doesn't happen again in 2 years when you guys hit another rough patch? You don't have one, Derek said, surprising me with his honesty. I can't promise we'll never need help again. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise we've learned from this. Bella's already talking about going back to school, getting some kind of certification that would make her more employable. We're looking at downsizing, cutting expenses, and completely changing how we handle money. I wanted to believe him. Part of me genuinely did. But I'd heard similar promises before. Smaller scale, but same energy. Bella swore she'd budget better, be more responsible, think before making financial decisions. The promises usually lasted about 3 months before the next crisis hit. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss asking if I was back in the building yet. Reality check. I had a career to maintain, responsibilities that didn't revolve around my family's financial disasters. Derek, I need to get back to work. I'll think about everything you've said, but I can't make this decision standing in my office lobby. How long? He asked. How long do you need to think about it? The desperation in his voice was painful to hear. Give me until tomorrow night. I'll call you with an answer. Tomorrow night might be too late. These people... Derek. I put my hand on his shoulder. I said I'll call you tomorrow night. That's the best I can do. He nodded, deflated but accepting. Okay, tomorrow night. And Marcus? Thank you for even considering it. I know this isn't fair to you. After Derek left, I couldn't concentrate on work. The afternoon meetings passed in a blur of numbers and projections that felt meaningless compared to the weight of the decision hanging over me. By 5 o'clock, I'd made up my mind to leave early and think things through properly. But the family pressure campaign was just getting started. I walked into my apartment to find my phone ringing. Not a call. It was connected to my Bluetooth speaker, meaning someone had been calling repeatedly until the system automatically answered. "Marcus? Marcus, are you there?" Mom's voice filled my living room. "I'm here, Mom. What's the emergency?" "Oh, thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you all day. Did Derek find you at work?" So she knew about that. "Yeah, he found me. And? And I told him I'd give him an answer tomorrow night." "Marcus, honey, I don't think you understand how serious this is. I talked to Bella this afternoon, and she's barely holding it together. These people called her job today. Her job, Marcus. They're harassing her at work." I sat down heavily on my couch. Calling someone's workplace was definitely escalating beyond normal debt collection practices. What exactly did they say? They asked to speak with Isabella Williams Crawford about an urgent financial matter. Her supervisor wants to know what's going on. Bella's afraid she's going to lose her job on top of everything else. That was a new wrinkle. Bella worked as a receptionist at a dental office. Not exactly a high-paying job, but steady income they desperately needed. If she lost that on top of Derek being unemployed, they'd be completely underwater. "Mom, I need you to understand something. $38,000 isn't pocket change even for me. That's more than most people make in a year. I know it's a lot of money, sweetheart, but you're doing so well. That promotion last year, the bonus, your savings account, how?" "Do you know about my savings account?" Silence. Long, telling silence. "Mom, how do you know about my savings?" "Bella might have mentioned that you'd told her about it around Christmas when you were talking about maybe buying a house soon." I closed my eyes and tried to remember that conversation. For Christmas dinner, the whole family gathered around my parents' dining room table. I'd been in a good mood, optimistic about the future, and yes, I'd mentioned that I was finally in a position to start looking at houses. What I hadn't mentioned was specific numbers. What I hadn't said was that I could afford to bail out anyone who asked nicely. "What exactly did Bella tell you I said?" "Just that you were doing really well financially, that you had enough saved up to put a down payment on a house and still have money left over for emergencies. Enough for a down payment and emergencies." In my family's mind, that apparently translated to enough to solve our problems. "Mom, my emergency fund isn't meant for other people's emergencies." "But family is different, isn't it? We're not other people." There it was. The family trump card. The assumption that being related to someone meant their problems automatically became your problems, their debts automatically became your debts. "I need to go, Mom. I'll talk to everyone tomorrow." "Marcus, wait. Your father wants to talk to you too. And Bella's coming over tonight with the kids. Maybe you could come to dinner. We could all sit down and figure this out together." A family meeting. The last thing I wanted was to be outnumbered in my parents' dining room, with my niece and nephew as emotional leverage and everyone looking at me like I was the solution to all their problems. "I'm not coming to dinner. I said I'd give an answer tomorrow, and I will." "But Marcus," I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. The silence that followed was both a relief and a burden. For the first time in 24 hours, I could think without interruption. But thinking meant facing the reality of what was being asked of me and what saying yes or no would mean for everyone involved. I made myself dinner and tried to approach the problem like I would any financial decision at work. What were the risks? What were the potential returns? What were the long-term implications? The risks were obvious. $38,000 was real money that I'd never see again. Despite Derek's promises about payment plans, I knew the chances of getting repaid were essentially zero. This was charity, not a loan. The returns were harder to quantify. Family peace, maybe. The satisfaction of knowing I'd helped when I could. The knowledge that my niece and nephew would grow up in their own home instead of bouncing between relatives. But there were hidden costs too. The precedent it would set. The message it would send that Marcus was the family bank, always ready to bail everyone out. The resentment I'd probably feel every time Bella made another questionable financial decision, knowing I'd enabled it. I was still wrestling with these thoughts when someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Bella standing in the hallway, alone. No Derek, no kids, no backup. Just my little sister, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd seen her since we were teenagers. I opened the door. "I know you turned off your phone," she said quietly. "And I know you probably don't want to see me right now, but I needed to talk to you, just the two of us, without everyone else putting their spin on things." Against my better judgment, I let her in. Bella walked into my apartment like she was entering a courtroom where she was about to be sentenced. She didn't sit down immediately, instead wandering over to my bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of financial planning books and investment guides. "You always were the smart one," she said without turning around. "Even when we were kids, you had your life figured out while I was still trying to decide what to wear to school." I closed the door and leaned against it. "Bella, what are you really doing here?" She finally turned to face me, and I could see she'd been crying. Not the dramatic, manipulative tears I'd seen her use on our parents, but the quiet, exhausted kind that came from too many sleepless nights. "I wanted to tell you the truth. The whole truth, not the sanitized version Derek and Mom have been feeding you." That got my attention. I gestured to the couch, and we both sat down, leaving careful space between us. "The debt isn't just from Derek being unemployed," she began. "I mean, that's part of it, but it's not the whole story." I waited, sensing this was going to be one of those conversations that changed everything. "Remember when I started that online boutique 2 years ago? The one selling women's clothing?" I nodded. Bella had been excited about it, talking about being her own boss and building something from the ground up. It had seemed like a positive step toward responsibility. It was doing okay for a while. Not great, but okay. I was making enough to cover the initial investment, maybe a little profit. But then I got greedy. She twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit she'd had since high school. I saw other boutiques expanding, getting bigger warehouses, carrying more inventory. I convinced myself I needed to scale up to compete. So I took out loans to buy more products, rent a bigger storage space, and hire help I couldn't afford. Business. Loans. Some. But when the banks wouldn't give me more credit, I started looking elsewhere. Online lenders, peer-to-peer lending platforms, anyone who would give me money to keep expanding. I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. "Bella, please tell me you didn't—" I borrowed against the house, without telling Derek. The words hung in the air between us like a bomb that had just exploded. She'd borrowed against their house. The house Derek thought was safe, the house my parents had helped them with the down payment on. How much? $15,000 initially. But when the boutique started failing, I panicked. I thought if I could just get one more big inventory order, find the right products, I could turn it around. So I borrowed more. From the same lenders? From whoever would lend to me. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was too late. The boutique was hemorrhaging money. I couldn't make the loan payments, and the interest rates were— She shuddered. Some of them were charging 30% annually. 30%? No wonder the debt had spiraled so quickly. When did Derek find out? 3 months ago, when the first foreclosure notice arrived. I stared at her. Foreclosure notice? Bella, what exactly are we dealing with here? She took a shaky breath. The $38,000 isn't just to the private lenders. It's the total amount we need to stop the foreclosure and catch up on all the payments I missed. The house payment, the home equity loan I took out, the credit cards. I maxed out trying to keep the business afloat. This was so much worse than anyone had told me. Derek's visit to my office, his talk about losing the house. He'd been understating the situation. They weren't just behind on payments. They were actively in foreclosure proceedings. How long do you have? The sale is scheduled for next Tuesday, unless we can bring everything current. Next Tuesday. 6 days from now. Not Friday like Derek had said, not the end of the month like Mom had said. Next Tuesday. Jesus, Bella. Why didn't anyone tell me how close this was? Because we were afraid you'd say no if you knew how bad it really was. Derek thought if we told you we had a few weeks, you'd have time to think about it, maybe come around to helping us. Manipulation. Even in a crisis, even when asking for help, my family couldn't just be honest with me. And the private lenders? The ones calling your work? They're part of it. When I couldn't make payments on the business loans, they started getting aggressive. But Marcus, there's something else you need to know. I wasn't sure I could handle another revelation, but I nodded for her to continue. Some of the loans, I might have used your name as a reference. My blood went cold. What do you mean, used my name as a reference? When they asked for employment verification and references, I listed you as my brother who works in finance. I thought it would help me get approved, make me look more credible. Bella, please tell me you didn't forge anything. No, I would never do that. When they called to verify, I might have coached Derek on what to say if they asked about you. About your job, your income level. This kept getting worse. Not only was my family expecting me to bail them out, but my name and reputation had already been dragged into their financial disaster without my knowledge or consent. What exactly did you tell these people about me? She looked down at her hands. That you were a successful financial analyst, that you had a stable income and good credit. I thought it would make them more likely to approve the loans if they knew I had a family who was financially responsible. So these lenders think I'm somehow connected to your debt? Not legally connected. But they know you exist, and they know you have money. I stood up and started pacing. This was a nightmare. Not only was I being asked to pay off my sister's debt, but somehow I'd already been made part of the story she'd told to get that debt in the first place. Bella, do you understand what you've done? You've potentially made me a target for these people. If they think I'm connected to your financial situation, I know. And I'm sorry. I never meant for it to get this bad. When I started the business, I really thought I could make it work. I thought I was being smart, taking calculated risks. 30% interest rates aren't calculated risks. They're desperation moves. She started crying again, and this time it looked genuine. I know that now, but at the time, I was so focused on not failing, on proving I could build something successful, that I made one bad decision after another. I sat back down, feeling the weight of everything she'd told me. This wasn't just about Derek losing his job or even about Bella making poor financial choices. This was about fraud, about foreclosure, about my name being associated with financial criminals who charged desperate people predatory interest rates. Does Derek know all of this? About you using my name? About the real timeline? He knows about the foreclosure date. He doesn't know about the reference thing. More secrets. More half-truths between family members who were supposed to trust each other. Bella, I need you to understand something. What you're asking me to do, it's not just paying off debt, it's enabling a pattern of behavior that's been going on for years. Every time you've gotten in trouble, someone has bailed you out. Our parents, me, Derek, when you guys first got married, you've never had to face real consequences. I know, she whispered. But if you don't help us now, the consequences won't. Just be mine. Derek will lose his credit rating. The kids will lose their home. Mom and Dad will lose the money they put into our down payment. And what about me, Bella? What do I lose if I say yes? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Your peace of mind, probably. Your savings. Maybe your trust in your family. It was the most honest thing she'd said all evening. If I do this, I said slowly, what's your plan to make sure it never happens again? Derek's got 3 interviews lined up next week. 2 of them are for companies that pay better than his old job. Once he's working again, we'll have a steady income. That's not a plan, Bella. That's hope. What's your actual plan to change how you handle money? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I mean, I know we need to change, but I don't know how to do it. Money has always been this scary thing I don't understand. You make it look so easy, but for me, it's like trying to read a foreign language. Finally, some real honesty. Bella wasn't just bad with money, she was scared of it. She'd been making financial decisions based on fear and ignorance rather than any kind of plan or understanding. What if I said yes, but with conditions? Her eyes lit up with hope. What kind of conditions? Financial counseling. Both you and Derek. A real budget that you stick to. Complete transparency about your finances. No. More secrets? No more loans without family knowledge? Yes, absolutely. Whatever you want. And this would be the last time. Ever. No matter what happens in the future, no matter what kind of emergency or crisis comes up, you will never ask me for money again. She hesitated for just a moment, and I saw the wheels turning in her head. Was she calculating what future disasters might require my help? Was she wondering if she could really make that promise? Yes, she said finally. This would be the last time. I need to think about it, Bella. This is a huge decision, and I'm not going to make it based on emotion or family pressure. She nodded and stood to leave. I understand. And Marcus? I'm sorry. For all of it. For the mess. For dragging you into it. For not being the sister you deserved. After she left, I sat in my apartment feeling like I'd just learned that everything I thought I knew about my family was wrong. The debt was worse than they'd told me. The timeline was more urgent. My name had been used without my permission. And somehow, I was the only one who could fix it all. But the conversation with Bella had also shown me something else. For the first time, she seemed to understand the weight of what she was asking. For the first time, she seemed genuinely sorry for the pattern of behavior that had led to this moment. The question was that enough? I looked at my phone, still turned off from earlier. Tomorrow I'd have to make the decision that would either save my family or teach them that actions have consequences. I just hoped I was smart enough to know which choice was which. I woke up Friday morning to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had spread through the family network like wildfire, and everyone had an opinion about what I should do with my money. The first call I returned was to my cousin Jake, my dad's brother's son, who lived in Tucson and usually stayed out of a family drama. Marcus, man, I'm sorry to bother you this early, but my mom called me at 6 a.m. wanting to know if what she heard about Bella was true. I rubbed my temples. What exactly did she hear? Bella owes some dangerous people a ton of money, and you're the only one who can save her. Mom's freaking out, talking about how these people might come after the whole family. Aunt Sarah, Dad's older sister, notorious for turning molehills into mountains. Jake, tell your mom to calm down. Nobody's coming after anyone. Are you sure? Because Mom's already talking about changing her locks and maybe going to stay with cousin Diana for a while. This was how it always went in our family. One person's crisis became everyone's crisis, even when it made no logical sense. Aunt Sarah lived 3 hours away and had nothing to do with Bella's financial problems, but somehow she'd managed to make herself a potential victim. The lenders aren't going to bother Aunt Sarah. They want money, not revenge. But Marcus, if these people are as bad as everyone's saying. They're not loan sharks, Jake. They're predatory lenders. There's a difference. They use legal pressure, not physical threats. At least I hoped that was true. After Jake, I called my other cousin, Maria, who lived in Phoenix and had always been the voice of reason in our extended family. Maria, please tell me you're not calling to lecture me about family obligations. She laughed. Actually, I'm calling to tell you that whatever you decide, I support you. But Marcus, there's something you should know. What now? Your Uncle Tony called me last night. He wants to organize a family meeting. Uncle Tony, Dad's youngest brother, who'd appointed himself the family patriarch after Grandpa died 5 years ago. Tony loved nothing more than gathering everyone together to hash out problems that weren't his business. A family meeting about what? About pooling resources to help Bella. He thinks if everyone chips in a little, you won't have to carry the whole burden. I felt a headache coming on. Maria, most of our relatives can barely afford their own bills. What kind of pool is he talking about? That's what I said. But Tony's convinced that between all the cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends, we could raise maybe 10 or 15,000. Then you'd only have to cover the rest. Only cover the rest. As if $23,000 was pocket change. When's this meeting supposed to happen? Sunday afternoon, at Tony and Rosa's house. He's already called half the family. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine sitting in Tony's living room while 20 relatives debated how to spend my money. The thought made my skin crawl. I'm not going. I figured you'd say that. But Marcus, you should know that if you don't show up, Tony's planning to take a collection anyway and present it to you as a fait accompli. A collection for $23,000? From relatives who work retail jobs and live in apartments? I know it's ridiculous. But Tony's got this idea that family should sacrifice for family, no matter what. After Maria hung up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and trying to process the fact that my personal financial decision had somehow become a community project. People who had never shown interest in my life were suddenly invested in how I spent my savings. My phone rang again. This time it was someone I hadn't heard from in 2 years, my cousin Rebecca from my mom's side of the family. Marcus. Oh my. God, I just heard about poor Bella. This is so terrible. Rebecca was a drama magnet who treated other people's problems like entertainment. The fact that she was calling meant the story had reached every corner of the family tree. Yeah, it's a tough situation, I said carefully. I can't believe those horrible people are threatening her. Mom said they might take her house away from those sweet little babies. Emma and Tyler had somehow become sweet little babies in the retelling, despite being 4 and 6 years old. Rebecca, why are you calling? Well, I was thinking maybe we could start a GoFundMe page. Reach out to friends, family, people from church. If we shared Bella's story on social media, we might be able to raise some of the money. A GoFundMe page. The thought of my family's financial problems being broadcast to the internet for strangers to judge and potentially donate to made my stomach turn. That's not happening. But Marcus, people love helping families in crisis. I bet we could raise thousands of dollars. Rebecca, listen to me very carefully. If you start any kind of fundraising campaign for Bella, I will personally make sure everyone knows it's unauthorized and potentially fraudulent. She gasped like I'd slapped her. Fraudulent? Marcus, I'm trying to help. You're trying to turn my sister's problems into a public spectacle. Don't. I hung up and immediately called Bella. Marcus, did you decide? Because Derek's been pacing the house all morning, and I don't think I can take much more of this. Bella, I need you to listen to me. Under no circumstances are you or anyone else in this family allowed to start online fundraising for your debt. No GoFundMe, no Facebook campaigns, nothing. I wasn't planning to. Good. Because Rebecca just called me with that exact idea. And if this story ends up on the internet, I'm out. Completely out. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. But Marcus, people are starting to call me too. Relatives I haven't talked to in years wanting to know if the rumors are true. What rumors? That I owe money to the mafia. I almost laughed. The family telephone game had turned predatory lenders into organized crime. Bella, you need to shut this down. Call Tony and tell him there's no family meeting. Call anyone who's asking questions and tell them it's a private matter that doesn't concern them. I can't control what other people say or do, Marcus. Then I guess you'll find out how much their opinions are worth when it comes time to write a check. The threat hung in the air between us. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I'd played a power card, and we both knew it. I'll try, she said quietly. But Uncle Tony's pretty determined about this meeting. After Bella hung up, I realized I needed to take control of the narrative before it spiraled completely out of hand. I called my dad. Marcus, thank God you called. Have you heard about this family meeting nonsense? Yeah, I heard. Dad, I need you to shut it down. I'm trying, son. But Tony's got this idea that it's his responsibility to help solve family problems. Then tell him the problem is solved. Tell him I'm handling it, and the family meeting is canceled. Are you? Handling it? I took a deep breath. I'm still deciding, but I'm not making that decision in Tony's living room with 20 relatives watching. Fair enough. I'll call Tony and see if I can talk sense into him. But Tony wasn't easily deterred. An hour later, he called me directly. Marcus, your dad said you don't want the family meeting, but I think you're missing the point here. What point is that, Uncle Tony? Family takes care of family. When one of us is in trouble, we all pitch in. That's how we were raised. Uncle Tony, with all due respect, most of the family can't afford to pitch in, and the ones who can shouldn't be pressured into it. Nobody's being pressured. But if everyone gives what they can, the burden doesn't fall entirely on your shoulders. The burden isn't on my shoulders unless I choose to put it there. There was a long pause. Marcus, I know you've done well for yourself, but money isn't everything. Family is everything. If family is everything, then why am I the only one being asked to prove it with my bank account? Tony didn't have an answer for that. The calls continued throughout the day. Aunt Linda wanted to know if the rumors about Bella's gambling problem were true. They weren't. Cousin David offered to lend me $500 toward the debt, which was sweet but pointless. My mom's friend Carol called to say she was praying for our family during this difficult time. By evening, I felt like I was living in a fishbowl. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had advice, and everyone seemed to think they understood my situation better than I did. The final straw came when my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked on my door with a casserole and a concerned expression. Marcus, I hope you don't mind, but your mother called me. She's very worried about you and your sister. My mother had called my 70-year-old neighbor to discuss our family's financial problems. There were no boundaries left. Mrs. Chen, that's very kind, but this really isn't something you need to worry about. Your mother said you're having trouble deciding whether to help your sister. She wanted me to tell you that when I was young in Taiwan, family always came first. Always. I accepted the casserole and thanked Mrs. Chen, but inside I was furious. My mother was now recruiting elderly neighbors to guilt-trip me into compliance. That night, I turned off my phone and sat in my apartment trying to figure out how a private family matter had become a community-wide discussion. Everyone had an opinion about what I should do, but none of them were offering to actually do it themselves. The irony wasn't lost on me. All these people preaching about family obligation and sacrifice. But when it came time to write checks, suddenly it was my responsibility alone. I thought about the family meeting Tony wanted to organize. I imagined sitting there while relatives, who made $40,000 a year, told me how I should spend my savings. I imagined the speeches about family loyalty from people who'd never been asked to prove theirs with anything more than words. Sunday's meeting was going to happen whether I attended or not. The family would gather, they'd discuss my finances, and they'd probably decide that I was obligated to help Bella regardless of what I wanted. But they'd be making that decision without me. And more importantly, they'd be making it without my money. I'd heard enough opinions. It was time to make my own choice. Saturday morning brought the kind of phone call that changes everything. I was still in bed when an unknown number lit up my screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Is this Marcus Williams? The voice was professional, cold, and unfamiliar. Who's asking? This is Jennifer Walsh from Phoenix Financial Recovery. I believe we need to discuss your sister's debt situation. My blood went cold. Phoenix Financial Recovery. That had to be one of the predatory lenders Bella had borrowed from. And they were calling me directly. I'm not connected to my sisters. Debt in any legal capacity. Actually, Mr. Williams, your sister listed you as a personal reference on her loan application. She also indicated that you were aware of and supported her business venture. This was exactly what I'd feared when Bella told me she'd used my name. These people thought I was somehow involved in her financial decisions. I was never consulted about any loans, and I certainly never agreed to be a reference. Perhaps not formally, but we have documentation showing your name, occupation, and employer listed on Isabella Williams Crawford's application. When someone uses a family member as a reference, it implies a level of financial support or backing. It implies nothing. My sister used my name without permission. There was a pause. Then the woman's tone shifted slightly. Mr. Williams, I'm calling because we've been unable to reach a payment arrangement with your sister. Given your position in the financial industry and your apparent family commitment, we thought you might want to discuss resolution options. Family commitment. They were using my own profession against me, implying that someone who worked in finance should understand the importance of honoring debts. There's nothing to discuss. I'm not responsible for my sister's debts. Of course, not legally responsible. But Mr. Williams, your sister owes our company $14,600. That's just our portion of her total debt. If this goes to legal collection, it will be expensive for everyone involved. $14,000 just to their company. I was starting to understand how Bella's debt had snowballed so quickly when she was dealing with multiple lenders charging astronomical interest rates. Ms. Walsh, I'm going to say this once. I had no knowledge of my sister's loan applications. I never agreed to be a reference, and I have no intention of paying her debts. If you contact me again, I'll report it as harassment. Mr. Williams, I understand this is a difficult situation. I hung up, but the damage was done. The fact that they had called me meant they were escalating their collection efforts beyond just harassing Bella. They were now involving family members, using whatever information they had to apply pressure. My phone immediately rang again. This time it was Derek. Marcus, thank God. These people just called me at my buddy's house where I've been crashing to avoid them calling our home phone constantly. They said they talked to you? Derek, what are you doing at your friend's house? I've been sleeping there the past 3 nights. The calls at home were driving Bella crazy, and with the kids there. I figured if I wasn't around, maybe they'd stop calling the house line. So Derek had essentially moved out to escape the harassment. The family was already fracturing under the pressure. They said they spoke with you about payment arrangements. Derek continued. Does that mean... It means they're getting desperate and trying to pressure anyone connected to Bella. Derek, how many of these companies are there? 4 that I know of: Phoenix Financial Recovery, Southwest Capital Lending, Desert Mountain Investment Group, and some company called Pinnacle Funding Solutions. 4 companies. No wonder Bella's debt had spiraled so quickly. She'd been playing a shell game, borrowing, from one lender to pay another, each time getting deeper into a hole with worse terms. Derek, have any of the others called me? I don't know. But Marcus, if they're calling you, that means they're running out of patience. The foreclosure sale is Tuesday. If we don't have a solution by Monday morning... I know the timeline. After Derek hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring again. If one lender was calling me, how long before the others did the same? How long before they started calling my workplace, my friends, anyone whose name appeared? In connection to mine? The thought of these predatory lenders having access to my professional life was terrifying. My reputation at Morrison & Associates was built on trust, competence, and financial stability. Having debt collectors calling my office would be a disaster. Was still processing this when my building's front desk called. Mr. Williams, there's a woman here asking to see you. Says she's your aunt. I didn't have any aunts who would show up unannounced. What's her name? Rosa Williams. She says it's about a family emergency. Aunt Rosa, Uncle Tony's wife. The woman was actually coming to my apartment to lobby for the family meeting. Tell her I'm not available. She says she'll wait. I looked out my window and saw Rosa's old Honda Civic parked in the visitor spots. She'd driven 40 minutes from Glendale to ambush me in my own building. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Tony. Marcus, Rosa's downstairs. The least you could do is talk to her. Uncle Tony, I told you I'm not interested in the family meeting. This isn't about the meeting anymore. Rosa has something important to tell you about Bella. Something important. In my family, that could mean anything from genuinely crucial information to dramatic gossip that had been blown out of proportion. What is it? She won't tell me over the phone. Says it's something she needs to discuss with you face to face. I sighed and told the front desk to send Rosa up. She knocked on my door 5 minutes later, looking nervous and determined in equal measure. Marcus, thank you for seeing me. I know you probably think I'm here to pressure you about helping Bella. Aren't you? Not exactly. Rosa sat down on my couch and opened her purse, pulling out a small notebook. I'm here because of something I discovered yesterday. She handed me the notebook. It was filled with names, phone numbers, and dollar amounts written in Rosa's careful handwriting. What is this? I started calling family members about the meeting, trying to get a sense of how much money we could realistically raise to help Bella. But Marcus, what I found out, it's not good. I flipped through the pages. Next to each family member's name was a dollar amount, but most of them were tiny. $25 from Cousin David, $50 from Aunt Linda, $40 from Maria. Rosa, this adds up to maybe $800. That's not the problem. The problem is what people told me when I asked them to contribute. She pointed to a page near the back of the notebook. There, written in red ink, were notes that made my stomach sink. Cousin Rebecca told me she couldn't contribute because Bella still owes her $1,200 from 2 years ago when Rebecca helped with Bella's car payment. I kept reading. The notes got worse. Aunt Linda says Bella borrowed $600 last Christmas for emergency expenses and never paid it back. Your cousin Jake mentioned that Bella asked him for money 3 months ago for Emma's school supplies, promising to pay him back when Derek got his next paycheck. The pattern was clear. Bella hadn't just been borrowing from predatory lenders. She'd been working her way through the entire extended family, taking small amounts from relatives who couldn't afford to lose the money and had no way to pressure her for repayment. How much total? That I could verify? About $4,300 spread across 8 different family members. $4,300 that my sister had borrowed from relatives and never repaid. Money that people like Rebecca and Jake, who worked retail jobs and lived paycheck to paycheck, probably needed back but were too polite or embarrassed to demand. Rosa, why are you showing me this? Because Tony doesn't know. He's so focused on organizing this family meeting, getting everyone to chip in more money to help Bella, but he doesn't realize that half the family has already helped her. And they never got paid back. The notebook felt heavy in my hands. This changed everything. It wasn't just about Bella making bad business decisions or Derek losing his job. It was about a pattern of borrowing from family members who trusted her and then never making good on her promises. Does Bella know that you know about this? I don't think so. Most people only told me when I pressed them about why they couldn't contribute more. They're embarrassed about it, like they failed, somehow by not being able to afford to help more. Rosa was right. My relatives were feeling guilty about their inability to contribute money to help Bella, not realizing that they'd already contributed money that she'd never repaid. Marcus, there's one more thing. Rosa flipped to the last page of the notebook. I called your mom yesterday to ask about the family meeting. She mentioned that your parents have been helping Bella and Derek with their mortgage payments for the past 6 months. How much? $800 a month. I stared at her. My parents, living on Dad's construction pension and Social Security, had been paying $800 a month toward Bella's mortgage. That was probably a third of their monthly income. They've been doing this for 6 months? According to your mom, yes. She said they couldn't stand the thought of the grandkids losing their home. The math was staggering. $4,800 from my parents over 6 months. $4,300 from various relatives over the past 2 years. Plus, whatever Derek's family had contributed. Bella hadn't just borrowed $38,000 from predatory lenders. She'd been systematically draining money from everyone. Who cared about her? Rosa, why are you telling me this instead of Tony? Because Tony would want to organize an intervention or a family confrontation. He'd turn it into drama. But you need to know what kind of pattern you'd be enabling if you pay off her debt. She was right. If I paid $38,000 to get Bella out of this mess, I'd just be the biggest mark in a long line of family members who'd been taken advantage of. What do you think I should do? Rosa closed the notebook and put it back in her purse. I think you should make whatever decision lets you sleep at night, but I think you should make it with all the information. After Rosa left, I sat in my apartment staring at the wall. The phone call from the debt collector. Derek is essentially living at a friend's house. Rosa's notebook full of unpaid family loans. The revelation that my parents had been sacrificing $800 a month they couldn't afford. This wasn't a crisis. This was a pattern. And everyone in my family except me seemed to be either enabling it or suffering from it. My phone buzzed with a text from Bella. Derek said one of the lenders called you. I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. We need to talk, tonight, just you and me. Her response came immediately. Okay, but Marcus, please don't let them pressure you. This isn't your fault. It wasn't my fault. But if I wrote a check for $38,000, it would become my choice. And after everything I'd learned today, I was starting to understand that some choices couldn't be undone. Bella arrived at my apartment Saturday night looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in yesterday. She walked in and immediately started apologizing. Marcus, I'm so sorry about the debt collector calling you. I had no idea they would do that. When I listed you as a reference, I thought it was just paperwork. Sit down, Bella. Something in my tone made her stop mid-sentence. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped in her lap like she was bracing for impact. We need to talk. About Rosa's notebook. The color drained from her face. What notebook? The one where she wrote down all the money you've borrowed from family members over the past 2 years. $4,300, Bella, from people who can't afford to lose that money. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it, but then her shoulders sagged. How did Rosa find out? She was calling everyone about Uncle Tony's family meeting, trying to see how much money could be raised to help you. A funny thing happened. Turns out most of the family can't contribute because you already took their money. Bella's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't in the mood for crying anymore. Cousin Rebecca, $1,200. Aunt Linda, $600. Jake, $300 for Emma's school supplies. Should I keep going? I was going to pay them back. When, Bella? You've owed Rebecca money for 2 years. Jake's been waiting 3 months for $300. When exactly were you planning to pay these people back? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When things got better, when Derek found work, when the business turned around. The business failed 6 months ago. Derek's been unemployed for almost as long. At what point were you going to face reality and tell these people you couldn't pay them back? I couldn't. They needed the money too. Rebecca was helping her daughter with college expenses when she lent me that money. Jake was saving up for a car, if I told them I couldn't pay them back. So instead, you decided to borrow from predatory lenders and hope for a miracle. Bella was crying harder now, but I pushed on. There was more she needed to hear. And then, there's Mom and Dad. She looked up sharply. What about them? $800 a month, Bella. For 6 months, they've been covering part of your mortgage payment while living on a pension and Social Security. They offered. They offered because they thought it was temporary, because they believed you when you said Derek would find work soon and you'd be back on your feet. They've given you $4,800 they couldn't afford to lose. I didn't know you knew about that? There's a lot I didn't know, but now I do. Want to know what else I know? She shook her head, but I continued anyway. I know that this isn't about Derek losing his job or your business failing. This is about a pattern. For years, you've been borrowing money from anyone who would lend it to you and then making it someone else's problem when you couldn't pay it back. That's not true, isn't it? When you couldn't pay the family members back, you borrowed from lenders. When you couldn't pay the lenders, you expected me to bail you out. What happens when the next crisis hits, Bella? Who's the next person you'll ask to fix your problems? She was sobbing now, but I wasn't done. Do you want to know the worst part? It's not even about the money. It's about the fact that you've been lying to everyone. Derek doesn't know about half the family loans. Mom and Dad don't know about the others. Even your husband doesn't know the full extent of what you've done. I was protecting them. You were protecting yourself. You were managing the narrative, keeping everyone in the dark so they couldn't compare notes and realize what you were doing. Bella buried her face in her hands. I know how it looks, Marcus. I know it seems terrible. But I never meant for it to get this bad. Every time I borrowed money, I really believed I could pay it back. But you never did pay it back. Not once. Not to anyone. Because something always happened. Derek's hours got cut, or the car needed repairs, or Emma needed something for school. There was always something that came up. There's always something, Bella. That's life. That's why people budget, why they save money, why they live below their means. But you've been living like someone else would always be there to catch you when you fell. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. So what are you saying? That you won't help? I stood up and walked to my kitchen counter where I'd placed something earlier. A manila folder containing bank statements and financial documents. I'm saying that before I make any decision, you need to see something. I opened the folder and pulled out my bank statement, placing it on the coffee table in front of her. Go ahead. Look at it. Bella hesitated, then picked up the statement. Her eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. Marcus, you have $96,000 in my savings account. Yeah, I know. She stared at the paper like she couldn't process what she was seeing. I had no idea you had this much money. Of course you didn't. Because unlike some people, I don't broadcast my financial situation to my family. But if you have $96,000, then $38,000 isn't. I mean, I could afford it, financially. The question isn't whether I can afford to pay your debt. The question is whether I can afford to enable your behavior. Bella set the bank statement down carefully, like it might explode. What do you mean? I mean that if I write you a check for $38,000, what lesson does that teach you? What lesson does it teach Emma and Tyler? That no matter how irresponsible you are with money, Uncle Marcus will always be there to fix things. But the foreclosure will be the consequence of choices you made, choices to borrow money you couldn't repay, choices to use other people's names without permission, choices to lie to your husband and your family about your financial situation. I sat back down across from her. Bella, I love you. You're my sister, and I don't want to see terrible things happen to you. But I also love Rebecca, who's still waiting for $1,200 she lent you in good faith. I love Jake, who's been too polite to ask for his $300 back. I love Mom and Dad, who've been sacrificing $800 a month they can't afford because they believe your promises. So you're just going to let us lose everything? I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices. Maybe for the first time in your adult life. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the bank statement. What about Derek? What about the kids? Derek will figure out how to rebuild his credit and start over. The kids will learn that actions have consequences, which is apparently a lesson you never learned. Marcus, please. I'm begging you. I'll pay you back. I swear. I'll get a second job. I'll do whatever it takes. Like you were going to pay back Rebecca? Like you were going to pay back Jake? She had no answer for that. Bella, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that 5 years from now, you're in another financial crisis. Maybe Derek gets sick. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe something happens. With the kids, who are you going to call? After this, I'd never ask you for money again. Really? Even if it was life or death? Even if the kids needed something you couldn't provide? You'd never pick up the phone and call me? She was quiet. Of course you would. Because that's what you do. You make your problems everyone else's problems. And if I bail you out now, I'm telling you that's okay. I'm telling you that Marcus will always be there with his checkbook when things get bad. But what if things are different? What if Derek and I really do change how we handle money? I picked up the bank statement and put it back in the folder. Then you'll change without my $38,000. You'll find a way to deal with this crisis, and you'll learn from it, and you'll make sure it never happens again. And if we can't? If we lose everything? I looked at my sister, this woman who'd been taking advantage of our family's love and generosity for years, and felt something shift inside me. Then you'll lose everything. And maybe that's what needs to happen, for you to understand what you've been doing to the people who care about you. Bella stood up, anger replacing tears. I can't believe you're being this cold. This is cruel. I'm not being cruel, Bella. I'm being honest. For the first time in this whole situation, someone is being completely honest with you. Derek was right. He said you'd probably say no because you're too selfish to help your family. Derek doesn't know about the money you owe Rebecca, or Jake, or Aunt Linda. Did you tell him about that when you were calling me selfish? She had nothing to say to that. Bella, I want you to leave now, and I want you to go home and tell Derek the truth. All of it. Every family member you've borrowed from, every lie you've told, every promise you've broken. Let him decide if he still wants to call me selfish, after he knows what kind of wife he's been defending. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. This is it, Marcus. If you don't help us, we're done. I'll never forgive you for this. I looked at my sister, this person who'd been manipulating and using our family for years, making threats even now. Bella, I said quietly, I think I can live with that. She slammed the door on her way out. I sat in my quiet apartment, looking at the folder containing my bank statement. $96,000, more money than most people see in years. Money I'd worked hard for, saved carefully, planned to use for my own future. Money that could solve my sister's problems with the stroke of a pen. But for the first time since this crisis began, I felt completely at peace with my decision. Kati, money would stay in my account, and my family would finally learn what it meant to face consequences. Sunday morning arrived with an eerie silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no family members showing up at my door. For the first time in a week, my apartment felt peaceful. I made coffee and checked my phone. Nothing from Bella, nothing from Derek, nothing from my parents. Either the family was regrouping for another assault, or they'd finally accepted my decision. Around noon, that silence was broken by a call from Maria. Marcus, what the hell happened last night? What do you mean? Bella called me at midnight, crying hysterically. She said you showed her your bank statement and told her she deserved to lose everything. I sighed. Even in defeat, Bella was managing the narrative, making herself the victim. That's not exactly what happened, Maria. She said you have almost $100,000 in savings, but you're refusing to help her out of spite. Did she mention the $4,300 she owes to family members? Or the fact that Mom and Dad have been sacrificing $800 a month they can't afford? Silence on the other end of the line. She didn't mention that part, Maria said quietly. I figured she wouldn't. Marcus, is it true? About the money she owes family? Rosa can show you her notebook. She documented everything. Maria was quiet for a long moment. Jesus, I lent her $200 last summer for Tyler's birthday party. She said Derek's paycheck was late. Did she pay you back? No, I figured. It wasn't worth making a big deal over $200. How many other people figured the same thing? I could hear Maria processing this, realizing that her small loan was part of a much larger pattern. Marcus, what's going to happen to her? To the kids? I don't know. That's up to Bella and Derek to figure out. The foreclosure sale is Tuesday. I know. You're really not going to help. It wasn't a question. No, Maria, I'm not. After Maria hung up, I waited for the next wave of family calls, but they didn't come. Either Bella hadn't called everyone yet, or people were starting to understand that there was more to this story than they'd been told. Monday afternoon brought a call from Derek. His voice was different, tired, defeated, but also strangely calm. Marcus, I need to apologize to you. Derek. No, let me finish. Bella told me everything last night, about the family loans, about using your name on the applications, about how much money she's borrowed from everyone over the years. I was surprised. I'd expected Bella to continue managing the narrative, not come clean to her husband. How are you handling that? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I knew things were bad, but I had no idea they were this bad. I feel like I've been married to a stranger. What are you going to do? I don't know. The foreclosure sale is tomorrow. We're going to lose the house. I'm staying at my buddy's place indefinitely. Bella's moving back in with your parents with the kids. My parents. Of course. They'd take in Bella and the grandchildren, continuing enabling her behavior even after losing their house. Derek, I'm sorry it came to this. Are you, though? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you could have prevented all of this. You have the money. You chose not to use it. Yes, I chose not to enable my sister's financial irresponsibility. Right. And now my kids don't have a home. Derek's tone wasn't accusatory exactly, but it wasn't understanding either. He was stating facts, letting me wrestle with the implications. Derek, if I had paid off the debt, what would have changed? Would Bella have suddenly become responsible? With money? Would you two have addressed the underlying problems that created this mess? Maybe. We'll never know now. After Derek hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about those kids. Emma and Tyler, ages 4 and 6, who were about to learn that homes weren't permanent, that security could disappear overnight. It wasn't their fault their mother had made terrible financial decisions. But it also wasn't my responsibility to shield them from the consequences of those decisions. Tuesday came and went. I didn't call to check on the foreclosure sale, didn't reach out to see how my family was handling the aftermath. I went to work, had my meetings, reviewed investment portfolios, and pretended my personal life wasn't imploding. Wednesday brought unexpected news. Rosa called me around lunchtime. Marcus, I thought you should know, Bella's house didn't sell. What do you mean? The foreclosure sale. Nobody bid on it. Apparently, there were liens and title issues that scared off potential buyers. The bank postponed the sale for 30 days to sort everything out. 30 days. A reprieve, but not a solution. Unless Bella could come up with $38,000 in the next month, she'd be right back where she started. How's she? Handling it? According to your mom, she's applied for 3 jobs since Monday. Real jobs, not get-rich-quick schemes. Derek's got 2 interviews lined up. They're talking about filing for bankruptcy to deal with the predatory lenders. It sounded like Bella was finally facing reality. Maybe losing everything had been the wake-up call she needed. And Mom and Dad? They're okay. Stressed about having 3 extra people in the house. But okay. Your dad mentioned something about being relieved that they don't have to keep helping with mortgage payments they couldn't afford. That was something, at least. My parents were no longer bleeding $800 a month they didn't have. Thursday. Brought the call I'd been expecting but dreading. My mother. Marcus, we need to talk. Mom, if this is about, it's not about the money. Well, not entirely. Can you come over for dinner Sunday? Just family. Will Bella be there? Yes, but Marcus, things are different now. She wants to apologize. To everyone. I doubted that. Bella wasn't the apologizing type, especially when she felt like she was the one being wronged. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. Your father misses you. We all miss you. The guilt trip was subtle but effective. I hadn't seen my parents in over a week, the longest we'd gone without contact. In years. Just dinner. No discussions about money, no pressure about helping Bella, just family. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was surreal. Emma and Tyler were there, playing with toys in the living room like nothing had changed. Derek sat at the dining room table looking exhausted but sober. My parents seemed smaller somehow, older, like the stress of the past weeks had aged them. And Bella looked different. Her hair was pulled back severely, no makeup, wearing clothes I'd never seen before. She looked like someone who'd been forced to grow up overnight. We sat around the same table where, just 2 weeks earlier, I'd been the golden child with a good job and bright future. Now the dynamic has completely shifted. Marcus, Bella said quietly, I owe you an apology. I waited. I've spent the past week thinking about everything you said, about the pattern, about the people I've hurt, about the lies I've told. She took a shaky breath. You were right. About all of it. It was the first time in my life I'd heard Bella take full responsibility for her actions. I've been calling people, she continued. Rebecca, Jake, Aunt Linda, everyone Rosa had in her notebook. I can't pay them back right now, but I wanted them to know that I remember what I owe and I intend to make it right. How? I got a job. Assistant manager at a retail store in Glendale. It's not much, but it's steady income. Derek's got interviews lined up with 2 construction companies. We're filing for bankruptcy to deal with the predatory lenders, and we're going to use whatever money we can save to pay back the family first. I looked at Derek. How do you feel about that? Honestly, it's a relief. Living with secrets, managing all these debts. It was killing me. At least now everything's out in the open. My dad spoke up for the first time. Marcus, your sister, has asked us to help her set up a budget, a real one with accountability. We told her she has to pay us back the mortgage money we lent her before we'll help with anything else. That was unexpected. My parents, who'd been enabling Bella for years, were finally setting boundaries. And the house? Gone, Bella said simply. The bankruptcy will probably delay things for a few months, but we're not fighting it anymore. Derek and I are looking for an apartment we can actually afford. I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity, but all I saw was exhaustion and what looked like genuine remorse. Bella, why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that you were right to say no. If you had paid off the debt, I probably would have kept making the same mistakes. I would have learned that no matter how badly I screwed up, someone would always bail me out. It was the closest thing to wisdom I'd ever heard from my sister. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she continued. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understood what you were trying to teach me. Dinner proceeded quietly after that. No drama, no arguments, no guilt trips. Just a family eating together and trying to figure out how to move forward. As I was leaving, Derek walked me to my car. Marcus, I want you to know something. I was angry at you for a while. Really angry. But watching Bella these past 2 weeks, seeing her finally take responsibility, I think you did the right thing. Even though you're losing the house? The house was never really ours anyway. We couldn't afford it. We were drowning in debt trying to keep it. Maybe losing it is what we needed to start over properly. 6 months later, I got a check in the mail for $50. No note, just a check from Bella's new bank account. It was the first payment toward the money she owed family members. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I deposited the check and called her. Bella, it's Marcus. I got your check. I know it's not much, but I wanted to start somewhere. I'm paying everyone back $10 a month until the family debts are cleared. That's going to take years. I know. But at least it's something. It was something. For the first time in her life, Bella was keeping a promise about money. How are things going otherwise? Good. Different, but good. Derek's working steady now. I got promoted to assistant manager, and we found an apartment we can actually afford. The kids are adjusting to the new school. It's not the life we had before, but it's honest. Honest. That was probably the most important word in Bella's vocabulary now. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it. Marcus, thank you. For saying no. For making me face this. I know it wasn't easy. No, it wasn't. But it was right. Looking back, refusing. To pay my sister's debt was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. But it was also one of the most important. By saying no, by letting her face consequences, I gave Bella something more valuable than $38,000. I gave her the chance to grow up. And sometimes, that's the greatest gift you can give someone you love. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.